This is the full review of the Audi Q8 here in this dragon orange color. It's a very interesting winter evening here, but this color here brings a lot of light and more to the exterior, interior and the driving experience to this vehicle. Is it just a cut-off Q7 or is it more? Let's find out together on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars. Here is Thomas in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go. LED headlamps are standard. Optional, there's the matrix LED, but then you always get a very interesting LED daytime running light. With the matrix LED light you also get those cascading turning indicators, and if I search for the key, which I have in my pocket, I can show you that as well. When I, for example, open or close the vehicle, you can see here how it's cascading in this LED light. Very interesting right there. You also then get this cascading at the rear lights. The front is very strong with the single frame grille, also with the sporty S-line we have for you today here. And again, this dragon orange color. There's also a very strong galaxy blue, by the way. I would love that. I mean, they are daring colors, but I think it's good that they have also some daring colors as a choice. If you compare it to your Q7, you can see also already this lower line in the front. The sensors are hidden right there, so you can keep a 3D Audi logo. Give me your opinion. Well guys, this time the side profile starts when I'm sitting in the car, because I want to show you here when I'm in a dynamic mode, the car is really lowered all the way, but I can also go in the off-road mode, and then it goes a little bit up with the suspension. And this really also changes how the car looks from the exterior, because when the off-road mode and when the suspension is raised up, then it looks also more SUV-ish. And when you put it in the normal modes, for example, in the dynamic mode, the car sits lower, and then it looks also definitely sportier somehow. What do you think? Well, it's really interesting, I can tell you so far. Yeah, mobile phone is still in the vehicle. 4,99 meters or 16'4" is the total length. That's 7 centimeters less or 3 inches less than the Audi Q7. But of course it's still the same segment, and the siblings are also the Volkswagen Touareg and the Porsche Cayenne. They're all sitting on this very same platform. You can see here the roof rails and the frames are in contrast chrome. Wheels are 21-inch. There are also 22-inch available, and those ones look a little bit smaller here at the moment because they're mounted with winter tires. But I think it's still a good choice. You can also go with 20-inch, for example, because you always need to have a compromise between the comfort and the looks. Here I just hit the door handle from the outside when you put your hand on the inside, and again you open the car again for the keyless entry. And you can see here also those mirrors here flip in and out, frameless window. I can already show you that here. Then you can see this, the S-Line, which has the vehicle color painted wheel arches. You can also get it more in a crossover SUV look if you go for a base version, for example, so you can choose it. I would rather go with the plastic wheel arches because they stress this SUV crossover style. I somehow prefer that. What do you? And then the Q8 here has a little lower roofline there if you compare it especially to the Q7, but it does not have this very round shape as other SUV coupes, so it just has this strong sporty shoulder right there, but still remains pretty angular. What do you think? Wow, that looks impressive from the rear, right? Especially with this light strip that's going all over the vehicle. Audi goes for that too. Porsche is going for that big time. Some of the new vehicles just have this middle strip as a reflector line, for example. Some of the VW and Seat models now, but Audi and Porsche are allowed to have it as a real LED. And then again, this vertical LED structure at the lamps here really looks very cool. And again, I think it's an improvement if you compare it to an Audi Q7. The lower part here, this is just visual, this is not an actual exhaust. The real exhaust is really underneath. The S-Line also features some sporty elements right there with this diffuser. And by the way, the ground clearance with the standard suspension is 22 centimeters. And with the air suspension maximum then all the way up in the off-road mode 25 centimeters. But as I've just shown you, could also go way lower. And if it sits in the dynamic mode, I still think it looks almost like a wagon again when you're in a dynamic mode, because the car is then quite low at the ground. So it's pretty easy with the engines here. This one is a 3-liter TDI with 286 horsepower, or another spec with 231 horsepower. It's called the 50, this one here, or the 45, the smaller one. And then there's a 3-liter TFSI, the petrol engine, with 340 horsepower. This one is called 55, and all are mild hybrid engines. Let's see later on how that one plays out for the consumption. Of course, all with all-wheel drive, but different all-wheel drive systems. I'll talk about that also when we drive the car later. Let's take a look at the interior. Frameless windows, coupe style, pretty cool. And they also nailed it here with the Alcantara at the inside of the doors. The top part, by the way, is not entirely hard, but quite hard. Not really soft, so I would say quite hard at the top part there. Good quality at the window buttons, and also where you could control the side mirrors. This bottle opening is quite large, so that does fit, and you open the trunk there too. And I really love that they found this grey styling here for the interior. That looks pretty cool. You can get different colors, of course. Also for the decor elements, like you've seen here with the matte aluminum brush. And there are also different seats available, different seat forms. So you start with the base seat. Then there is a comfort seat, which is, you know, a little bit different in the form, just a little bit. And then there's a sport seat with more side bolsters and stuff. And this one is the S sport seat. So the sport is seat that is available with the integrated head restraint. If you like that, or if it does fit you, that's really a matter of preference. They are still comfortable for sport seats, I have to say. And the thing is, you can get one animal skin alternative, and that is with the normal sport seats with the separate head restraint. And then you can get on the inside Alcantara and on the outside animal skin. But Audi with the Q8, they are not really sustainable yet as for the seats. In the US, by the way, you could only get the normal seats and the comfort seats, not the sport seats, not the S sport seats. Not sure why they limit the product portfolio in that case then for US customers. I think that's not a good decision. Here the steering wheel, this is the S-Line interior pack 2, so you get an S steering wheel with a lower bottom, for a flat bottom, and also some more sporty elements. For example, also this S entry badge. And what I really like, look at that. Here, where you enter, it's just an even surface basically. That also enables you to remove the floor mat for cleaning quite easily. There's not a step from here then inside the mat. That's really cool. I just like it, and it's also easy to get in and out the vehicle then. Let's now get inside, and again, it's pretty easy also because there's no sill you have to step over, and you have this upright SUV seating position, a command view. That's really cool. Still, it works also for tall people. And 1m86 or 6'1", and still keep a lot of headroom there. So even if you go for a panoramic roof, that would be no problem. Steering wheel can be adjusted here. Electric function in height and also in reach. And of course we also have electric seats here, but well, not of course, because they let you pay for every option for sure. Here with the integrated head restraints, for some it does work, for some not. I can tell you, you know that I don't agree so much with their seating surface they're using at the moment. It will improve in the future. They've recently shown up with a new e-tron GT concept, but I really agree with their ergonomics. They found great seating forms here, no matter which seat you're actually going for. So it's really comfortable also on a long-term run, and so you don't have less comfort here, for example, if you compare it to an Audi Q7. And also if you think about the other siblings, the Volkswagen Touareg or also the Porsche Cayenne, and also cross-brand, this is still one of the most comfortable full-size SUVs here to me, although it already has this sportier setup. So an interesting finding here. And by the way, option, you see also that we have the soft close. Interior overview, everything is wrapped tightly, horizontal, goes right through with this climate unit, the Quattro logo. I think it's also very well integrated right there. I mean, there is a lot of black piano lacquer for sure. That's maybe too much at some point. Of course, always have to use the microfiber tissues here to clean everything so it doesn't leave so much fingerprints. They go touchscreen all the way. 12.3 digital instruments on the left, virtual cockpit. Soon there will be a virtual cockpit plus, an updated variant. Then in the middle part there's an 8.6 inch screen always at the lower part, and the top one is 10.1 inch. Basically also counts for A6, A7, A8 and so on. There is a base 8.8 also here on the top, but in some markets, but usually the most markets will already start with the big screen right there. You can see Apple CarPlay integration soon also in the details of all of those screens. First finish this interior overview with the steering wheel. You have a perforated structure, good grip with the S steering wheel, also with a good feedback, talking more about that when we drive the car, and also with the single frame Audi grille on top of the steering. I think a very clean interior for sure. And they went all, by the way, here for the cup holders here, they went all the way with the touchscreens, so you cannot control it from somewhere here, or also not on the steering wheel. Well, the digital instruments, that you can do control from the steering wheel, but nothing in this area. And here when it's dark, we can also take a look at the ambient lighting. Here you can turn it brighter and less bright. This is called solar. That would be corresponding to the orange color, but Caribbean is also pretty cool, right? In this turquoise color. Always reminds me of holiday. So Impulse, the red sporty one. Maritime with a more Thomas blue alike. Contour, this is more bright and contrast. And again, we can always put it brighter. See, it seems that it's saving also, you know, like the brightness setting for each color. And now, again, all is all bright. Now we can switch through the colors once more. Always looks pretty cool, especially there in this Quattro sign area. Yeah, here we go. So which one would you go for? I think that would be mine. Unless I'm in holiday mood, I would probably go for that. But in this case, I think as the exterior colors also in that way, this one also works pretty well, pretty nice. Maybe once more here also with this perspective. You can also see how it looks like then, or changes at the inside of the doors. And it's also happening here at the driver's side, so left side of the steering wheel is also illuminated than each. This is the virtual cockpit. You are pretty flexible, clear to read. Then you can have the map, for example, there, and also zoom in and out with your left thumb. Well, too bad we cannot access the CarPlay here. Otherwise, my criticism about not having a controller for the central infotainment system, you could then do everything here maybe, or maybe I could take a call or something, but that's not possible. But you also have, when you have that option, the night vision. And by the way, on the top part, you can see there is this check engine light symbol right there. And no, there's nothing wrong with the engine. That's just when you have turned on the ignition, but not the engine. At the moment, it's just telling you I'm working as a light, and as soon as I turn on the engine completely, you can see it disappears. And there's also a head-up display available, pretty clear to read, with speed, allowed speed, and if you have some route set, you also can see some arrows for the GPS. So here we go. They also offer Android Auto. That's the way you can get back to the system. And the one thing I deactivate first is always here with display, and then I go to this MMI and touch screen feedback, because if you activate that, here nothing happens when you click something like you would be used for a smartphone. You really have to put it very hard in there, like a real button. I'm not sure why they did that, maybe to get people used to touchscreens who have never used touchscreen before, but I think in the smartphone era, everyone has somehow used a touchscreen. Then it's for me just easier that I can also just easily tip like I'm used with a smartphone, so I always deactivate that function, but good that I can deactivate it actually. This is the main menu. The GPS looks really good. You can activate the satellite view or not. can go with or without it. This is already the night mode. You can see it is dimmed a little bit because it's dark outside, and it's super responsive. Well, what about the voice control? Set temperature to 23 degrees.
I'll increase the temperature to
Here we go.
23 degrees.
That's cool. I mean, you can still do it like this, but then maybe it's pretty placed lower there, and it's not a real turning knob, so you can only do it like this, or also like this. This is also possible. So you have different functions, but good that it also works via voice recognition. Also, for example, if you want to set a route or something. The lower part then, it stays with the temperature unit or also with the seat heating, unless you, for example, want to enter a new address up there. Then I know that that's with the wireless charging. You know, that's really putting it away from the wireless tray now. So, for example, when you're now searching for a location, something like, you can put in a B, like right like this, and then something is being searched there. But again, you can also use the voice command and name a city or something. Overall, the infotainment system is pretty fancy, yes, pretty cool, great visualization. For example, also the drive select, you can see how you can raise and lower the suspension, for example. In dynamic mode, it goes lower. But while you're driving, also when you're driving with the Apple CarPlay and stuff, then you reach over here, it can be a little bit distracting. So I like a solution where you can use this, really cool system, stationary and also for the co-driver, and maybe there would be another option to do it while driving. Maybe still the turning knob here, or maybe then something at the steering wheel for the right one that it can safer control it also while driving. And finally, if I hit this button, I can also check out the camera screen here. This is the rear view camera. There are different screens available. This is, by the way, the volume here for oh no so annoying. But of course, you can just control in how much volume you want to have. And by the way, if I just turn on the engine now, you can see those helping lines, they change a little bit. We've seen some better resolutions, but it's overall a good resolution. And if you want, you can also get the 3D view we've shown you with some other cars before. And this is also the automatic parking function if you're in if you want to just let the car do it. And the lower middle console here with some adaptive cup holders. And then this armrest here, it's really interesting because when you slide it forward, it also raises up just a little bit. It's really interesting. And you can also, of course, put it all the way up, but then you have to move it back first, and then just do it like this. Then there's a spot to put the microfiber tissue, and then this is also a spot for inductive charging, and then for the cable loading, you can see there are 2 USB supplies there. And I always wondered, can the phone charge with the cable or schmoozes there and inductive at the same time? Well, here I had cars where it does both actually, and now, well, it says in the car it would also be charging both, but it does not really do it. Instead, I get some error messages at the screen, but the thing is, when I remove the cable here and then put it on, then also the iPhone says it is charging. So what about the rear compartment? Also very easy entry here, nice materials on the inside of the doors, and still you have a lot of legroom. So we had other cars which had a bad package. They were big, still have enough legroom, but then maybe just a little bit here. But this one here, they really have a good pick. There's plenty of legroom left. That's really cool. Headroom in the rear is also no problem. The Q7 has a little bit more, yes, but even here they did not make a bad compromise, So some of those SUV variants of the SUVs, they are really like cut off at the back pretty much, and then you really lose some headroom. But here it's still absolutely okay, and it's super comfortable also here to sit in the rear. Also, you're still flexible. You can move this bench forward here to increase the space behind you. Of course, then you should be a little bit small to sit here. Also, you are able to change the angle of the rear bench. This would be sitting more upright or a little bit more behind. Then, of course, you can adjust it also for the luggage, for example. So it's pretty cool. Isofix at the outside of the seats each. Then you have a middle armrest. with some cup holders. You can also, just from here already, just flip the middle part as a ski hatch. Using the same lever here, you can also fold the same bench from here. So pretty flexible, pretty cool, very good result here for the rear. There's of course a middle tunnel, and then you have, if you want so, an additional AC unit here for the rear, as well as 2 more power supplies here, 12 volt, with those nice metal knurled and illuminated ones. So always when you open the trunk, you can also see this interesting LED light signature. 600 liters is the standard setup, and the length here is actually over 1 meter, 1 meter 07 in length. And then it's about 1 meter here, a little bit wider than 1 meter in width here, even wider here in this upper area. That's then, you know, it's almost 120 then. And the height here at the back part there is 53 centimeters, and just at the lower part here in the front, that is then rather 38 centimeters. So this is the only limit then. If you compare to the Q7 continues on right there. But besides that, you are actually not limited that much. It still offers you, you know, good capacity here. Putting in luggage there, you can see. And the only thing I'm also missing is there are no buttons here to flip the seats from here. You can lower the vehicle here if you have the air suspension to have an easier access then, but then you have to go around for the maximum capacity and flip the seats like this. Well, it's quite easy to do, and then you put them straight to the lower part, and then they're basically fixed, so they cannot flip up again somehow like this, and then we have the maximum loading capacity. This is 1,750 liters. And if we then check the length once more, so to my driver's seat, it's almost 2 meters, and this is here 2 meters. And if we put it all the way to the front to the shifting stick, to the lever, it would then be 2 meters 55. Hey, it's Thomas's driving lounge with the Audi Q8, and we're driving the 3-liter TDI. So very sonorous sound, very calm. You don't hear directly that it's a diesel. Really confident already from the engine. You know, AJ and Michelle have also tested the 3-liter TFSI, and we've had that also in the other big Audis. Of course, there's always a difference in consumption. This one here, I can already tell you, as for the consumption, it tends toward 9 liters on 100 kilometers. You can also score something below that if you use less seat heating or whatever, or less AC. That would be some 26 mpg as a realistic figure. And if you now ask yourself, wait a minute, didn't you drive the same engine in one of the big sedans? Yes, indeed. And there we had rather, you know, some 1.5, 2 liters less, so something more towards 34 mpg. So indeed, this SUV building form does give you more consumption. It's not a completely different result, but it is notable, definitely, because it has just more wind resistance. That's something that comes quite natural. On the other hand, I have this good overview, I have a higher seating position, and indeed this car remains a good overview, although it is this somewhat SUV coupe form. So I think that's also something which is, you know, would be really important to me, that they can still keep a very good overview. And you see also when I do some lane changing, it remains always quite agile. That's pretty cool. Being stuck in city traffic here just a little bit, you know, as usual, we deliver you city driving, countryside, motorway, everything you might experience in your everyday driving life. Here it's good, we can already test the adaptive cruise control. Set it here to a separate column behind the steering wheel. And now let's see, we are running. I'm doing nothing now. I'm just, you know, I'm always ready to brake, but now the car is reducing the speed to the car in front of me. Still braking, not myself. Now I should start the acceleration once again. Yeah, here we go. So it's working pretty nicely, this system. There's also the blind spot monitor here in those side mirrors. So when you're driving slowly, it is constantly flashing, or when there's someone then just in your blind spot, like now, you see this yellow light right there. And if I would set the turning indicator, you can see it is also flashing then. So there's another warning, basically. So let me also increase the speed here just a little bit. There we go. Starting also because you feel some bumpy now, uneven roads in the city. Talking about suspension, you have the adaptive suspension as standard for this car. It always depends on market, of course. And then optional with air suspension. Probably most of the Q8 will be bought with air suspension. But it has a rather sporty setup. So it does not have this air suspension carpet soft ride like you do have in the Mercedes GLE. And one by one, it seems that the Mercedes GLE is one of the few cars left there on the market which still has this very soft air suspension ride. And in general, I do expect that of an air suspension. Otherwise, I would go for an adaptive sport suspension or whatever. Here, it's still a good compromise. It's a little bit like in the BMW X5, where it also goes in a rather stiff direction for the air suspension. But it's still that you feel very good in here. But if someone tells you this is a very good adaptive suspension, it's not an air suspension, you say, yeah, okay, I believe you. So again, it depends again on what you like. And one other reason is that they wanted to differentiate this vehicle here a little bit to the Audi Q7. So they have a little stiffer setup than the Q7, make it sportier. And indeed, it drives quite sporty. I will show that also when we drive a little bit faster. And what you probably also hear, that it's super silent in here. There is the front insulation, of course, and also the side insulation. There's an additional insulation package there, and it's still silent, although we have those coupe style windows, no frames around it. Really pretty cool. So it's a cozy atmosphere. You feel somewhat sporty at the same time. And as I was driving this car for the very first time, I felt, wait a minute, this is a big car. But it really doesn't feel that way. It more feels like a put-up sedan. So it's not, for example, the Volkswagen Touareg, which is also a sibling to the Q7 and the Q8, does feel different. This one here definitely feels a little bit sportier, and also due to the rear axle steering, which we have inbuilt here, maximum of 5 degrees steering across to the front axle. This also reduces the turning circle and also accounts for this feeling that this car feels smaller than it actually is. And we not often say that about full-size SUVs. Full-size, of course, for European taste, when we have some 5 meters of length. Sometimes, in the US, this rather counts as a mid-size then. So, always power reserves, lane change is easily done, and such a good steering feedback. There is no dead area of the steering. So every precise command is transported to the road. I really love that. And from all those recent full-size SUVs, we've been testing the BMW X5, the Volkswagen Touareg, the Mercedes GLE, and was there any more else? Porsche Cayenne, of course, is also one of the siblings. And in general, cross-brand. Every brand has something which they do best. And near the Audi cars and also some of their Volkswagen Corporation siblings, they have very good steering feedback. And this one here, it's definitely among the best. So it is somewhat, well, that was a failure of the range sensor. Yeah, maybe just due to some drops, but now it's less clean than before. Great. I hope you can see that on camera. So back to the steering feedback. It is somehow light to steer, that you can easily, maneuver it, but at the same time, it feels sporty and gives you enough feedback, and that's something that is really hard to achieve, but they indeed have achieved that. So it's really just so much fun to steer this car around. And you know, big SUVs, they usually feel very comfortable and you can enjoy a long-term ride or something and traveling, a lot of room. But then sportiness, it's not so often. The Porsche Cayenne also offers that, yeah. But there also the seating position is way sportier. So I feel that this one here is a very good compromise. So they have tuned a lot of things to sportiness, like the steering and also suspension, also the seating position here with the S sports seats, with the integrated head restraints. But then again, you don't lose that comfort that sometimes I feel is maybe a little bit less in the Porsche Cayenne. So among those siblings, I think this one here is probably one of the best drive as for the overall driving fun, for example. I would take the Mercedes GLE if the soft air suspension and the comfort would be the most important to me. Although those seats here are also really comfortable, and also the other seats you can pick, I talked about it earlier. Audi has made some very comfortable seats recently. They really improved their work there, so that was pretty cool. But this one here would definitely also be among my choices. So, you know, I told you earlier, as I was first hearing about, oh, they now also do this SUV coupe style, I think, you know, whatever, cut off Q7 or so. But it's really awesome to drive. Really positively surprised about that. Here also with 100 kilometers or 60 miles on the motorway, and it's a little bit rainy outside still, so not so good road conditions and stuff. And you see sometimes blurry vision a little bit, but it's still remaining super silent in here, and it's giving me really a great ride once more. We can always go into a, let's say, better shifting mode. Well, that is blinding now, pretty much. So when we go to the S mode, just drop the speed just a little bit, I can show you some acceleration. So if we, why is everyone going so slow here? Interesting. So now I'm going 70 kilometers an hour, and I'll accelerate to 100 again, and let's go. That was already it. So you can see even at higher speeds you always have enough power reserve, really good. And when you're in the S mode, the gears are turned up higher, so you get a little bit more RPM. 6.3 seconds was the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. That's of course pretty amazing, considering the size of the vehicle. So this diesel gives you a lot of power and confidence, that's for sure. And again, sound-wise, it's not so bad to have this diesel than here too. The petrol engine then will be even higher in consumption. That's of course one thing that would be probably one of the reasons. There's also this drive select. You cannot control that well while driving, yes. So if you go from comfort, for example, to dynamic, then the air suspension goes down just a little bit. Also, we are then in this S shifting mode. Once again, I just initiated singularity. Here, see, you don't have to turn the steering wheel that much. Good feedback now from the car in the corner to the right again. A lot of fun, although the car is pretty big. And now it's more like so really stiffer feedback from the suspension, if you like so. You might remember it's about 9 centimeters from top spec to the lowest suspension spec, which would be the difference. I mean, it would be a little bit too stiff to ride here, maybe. You see, I'm catching up to people so early than now, even in corners. Although I'm not driving the, obviously, you know, sportiest car or something. Raising up, of course, in off-road mode, that would be rather when you're driving slow and really need some more ground clearance. Look at that feedback also when doing some slaloms. Hardly any SUVs where I like to do slalom with. The brakes, also quite satisfying. I mean, it's wet surface here now. I think they don't have a too harsh setup, but also not too soft. So really also a very new, it's funny. Now I'm standing still and then the air suspension is adjusting. I wonder how strange that looks when you're sitting on the outside of the vehicle, or maybe like behind the traffic light, and you know, what is this car doing there? But of course, this lowrider scene we recently shown you in the Mercedes GLE, where there was this special program mode which is not available from stock. where this car was really dancing. That was, of course, something else also very impressive. Now again, when standing still and those cars are passing by, even though it's raining, again, super silent in here. You can also activate the camera, but then one of the drawbacks is, of course, when it has been raining, there are some drops on the camera. It always depends, of course. Some cameras are hidden in the logo, especially the VWs have that. That's always a good idea, because then they're also protected by rain and everything. So that's not the case here. So it's quite blurry to see something from the rear. As soon as I put the sports mode in, the car is also awakening again from this stop-start mechanism. We can start driving once more. There's also the efficiency mode, by the way. So there the throttle input is being reduced. That helps me to keep up a good... I mean, come on. Who programmed this traffic light? Do you know such situations where you're driving the allowed speed and not racing, and then exactly when you're driving the allowed speed, the traffic light turns to red? I mean, come on. Seriously? Yeah, whatever. Gives me some time to talk about the all-wheel drive setup, because when they accelerate now, again soon, like already now, so I'm feeling pulled from the front and pushed from the rear at the same time, because it has a permanent all-wheel drive setup. This one here in the 3-liter TDI with the big horsepower spec is still the classic quattro drive, you know. I'm not sure, I've talked about that a couple of times already. Quattro is not one all-wheel drive. It's just their brand name for the all-wheel drives at Audi, and meanwhile they're thinking like 6 different kinds of. So it always depends on, you know, if that's the classic permanent all-wheel drive where we have like here, basic setup 40% in the front, 60% in the rear, and then it adapts a little bit. Or if it's this, for example, Quattro Ultra, the newest iteration, where you rather have again this front plus rear wheel drive. It's like the Halix system at VW or Seat, or also the smaller Audi models. But the Quattro Ultra, you have that, for example, in the smaller horsepower spec of this diesel. Yes, it's front plus rear wheel drive. It's more adaptive. The difference to the standard Haldex clutch is that they are at the rear axle. There's also another clutch which then can decouple the driving elements so they don't roll and don't use more fuel. So that's another efficiency trim. So you can say that the newer Quattro Ultra drive is more efficient, yes, but this one here rather delivers you, let's say, a standard all-wheel drive experience. So depending on what you really wish. And also those petrol engines go for this new Quattro Ultra drive. We now talked about it with the Audi A6, A7, A8 and so on as well. What do you think? Which all-wheel drive would you actually go for? So indeed, so many things you can do with this car in all of the disciplines, and everything is basically flawless. Yes, I mean, for a diesel the consumption should be a little bit lower, but considering the size of this vehicle and the SUV segment, it's also not that some of the competitors would be consuming less or something. So that's nothing unusual, but you know, I would always just wish that. Not sure if you can already see some of the ambient light. It gets a little bit darker now weather-wise. I also left it here on the yellow ambient light. It's also something pretty nice. So really seldom that I had an SUV that was so good in comfort and so good in the agile driving part at the same time. And it's not only that it's, you know, a cut-off Q7, it's also a, let's say, extensive Q7 facelift at the same time, and also with this rather sportier tune. So I can indeed understand if people at the moment say I'd rather go for the Q8 than for the Q7, unless you need that extra space in the very rear and that somewhat extra in legroom. But as we've shown you, you still do have some significant legroom. Here again, no matter if it's low speeds or high speeds, excellent steering feedback. This is one of the best things, you know, I really like about this vehicle. And the steering feedback and the precise steering is, to me, very important, because, you know, I'm sitting in this interior all the time. And I mean, if there's something on the exterior which I don't like, and yeah, you know, you don't see it when you're driving inside. But the steering, it's the thing, unless we are reaching the autonomous driving level, you're using it all the time. And if there's something you're not satisfied with the steering, that's not good. So I would always recommend you to go to test that before you actually buy a vehicle, or just watch Autogefühl and trust our verdict about that steering, because it can be quite annoying. I mean, there may be also people out there say like, you know, who cares? The main thing is the car drives, and if it steers a little bit less or more, whatever. It always depends, of course, you know, on how many cars you've been driving and how important so you know, those details are to you. But that's what we do here at your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews. We really pay attention to the details and try to give you the best feeling possible you might have for this vehicle. Feeling, by the way, also you can always hug this Alcantara A-pillar. Again, by the way, about the overview, even to the rear and to the sides, again, I have no problem. So you feel safe and you feel smaller with this vehicle, although when you look at it from the outside, also in this bright color, it doesn't look small at all. I think that's also something they've achieved very well. So it leaves me then with something to criticize. Yeah, you know, we don't do any nitpicking, let's say like, oh, we have to find at least one thing so so everyone believes us or something. No, we criticize when something there is to criticize, and we praise something when there's something to praise. And here, yeah, I mean, if you like a softer air suspension setup, that would be maybe something, but that's not really criticism, that's more like what you prefer. Consumption should be a little bit lower, of course. That's always, they can always something, you know, they can always work on. So this mild hybrid system that is also in this diesel, you know, doesn't seem to be working that well, actually. But then it's actually, especially in this segment here, pretty flawless vehicle. And now to our conclusion for today with the all-new Audi Q7. Yes, it's more than a cut-off Q7. It's basically an extensive facelift at the same time. Has a sportier exterior. On camera it somehow looks a little bit smaller and lower than it actually is, and it also feels smaller when driving, especially due to the rear axle steering, but also as they found a great sporty setup here without losing comfort. So it's a little bit sportier than the Audi Q7, but overall in the whole segment here of the big SUVs, and if you think about the inner corporation siblings, it's one of the best to drive. There are maybe some softer suspension setups, yes, but it has a great compromise, you know, with sportiness and comfort at the same time. It's just so great to drive and feels more agile even than it looks. Exterior also quite fresh, and they don't have this typical round style as other SUV coupes. I really like that. I more prefer this angular style. I don't like those round SUVs coupes that much, but this is personal taste. What do you think? And I think it really gained visual-wise if you compare it to the Q7. Interior, great processing quality. They have good stuff there, and just with the seats, you know, the materials are not sustainable there yet. They don't have too much animal skin alternatives. They will improve in the future. With controlling the screen, it's easy to use and intuitive. But again, while driving, you lack some commands you might be able to do with a central control knob or something. But then also the voice activation comes stronger more and more, that you can do some functions with that. You still have a lot of room, especially in the rear bench. And the trunk area is also not such a bad compromise. I mean, if you transport something which is very high also in the rear end part, that's a problem then if you compare it also to the Q7 or to other vehicles which are not that cut off at the rear. But in general, you still are really versatile with this vehicle. So it's both, you get the visuals and you get the room on the interior. What do you think about the all-new Audi Q8? Oh wait, I still found something to criticize. $67,000 is the price, entry price in the US, or 76,000 euros in Germany. But that's not all. If you put everything in there, here, this very vehicle with all the extras it has, 115,000 euros. That's really super expensive. Then you have to question yourself, yeah, is that really justified? And it's, you know, 10 to 15,000 euros more or US dollars more expensive than the Q7, but that you cannot directly compare because this one here starts with some more equipment extra and also with the bigger engines. The Q7 also available with smaller engines. So if you spec them equally, there will be still a couple of thousand euros difference, but not that much. But still overall, yeah, it's just if you have a lot of money, of course, or if you can afford high leasing rates, or if you at least get a very good deal from Audi. Let's hope for that. And goodbye.